And now, an American that lives and works in Brazil just to be racist towards Brazilians. You cannot make this stuff up, roll post. So, I'm a Brazilian history teacher. A few years ago, I met a coworker who taught English at an elite high school in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Let's call him the worst DM ever. He is also a US citizen. At that time, I was returning to playing D&D after the trauma that was 4th edition. And as he was also interested in the subject, I invited him to our group. We played Dragon of Icespire Peak, Lost Mines of Phandelver, and Curse of Strahd for years. In the first adventures, he was more reserved, not least because he did not master 100% of the Portuguese language yet, but over time he started to loosen up. The only thing I could say about him as a player was that in the last campaign I noticed a certain level of main character complex. But nothing that bothered me too much. The problem started when he got a little too excited to DM Rime of the Frost Maiden. As our DM had been GMing for over 2 years uninterrupted and deserved a break, and would also be cool to have a campaign in English. We accepted the offer. Bad idea. For me, the first red flag was right after session 0 when we got together to put together my character sheet. He didn't accept the sheet I had already prepared because he said it didn't fit the campaign scenario. I was annoyed, but figured he really wanted to use our background during the story. So I asked him a bunch of questions about the basics of the campaign, read the text he prepared for my players as he was really invested in it, and made a 110% scenario compatible sheet. I was proud of it and looking forward to play with that character. Brief summary. Boy feels the call to serve the Temple of Lathander in Brynshander. Becomes a paladin squire, then once he was out fulfilling a mission given to him, and when he returned, the paladin was kidnapped and killed as an offering to the Frost Maiden. Boy falls to his knees in front of the altar and can feel the call of the god to punish and avenge all of those who do wrong, and to revenge his master. You probably can already imagine the paladin subclass I wanted to become, but the DM thought I couldn't become a paladin of vengeance with this background. I disagreed with him and used the following comparison. There are 3 types of paladins. 99% of paladins are like the US military, he claims he fought in the Iraq War in the early 2000s, who dedicate their lives for good and freedom, even if they eventually are forced to use violence. Another type are like the Islamic terrorists. Them he cited the 2 big groups. Extremists who believe so much in their doctrine and in the revenge that they only know how to attack those who think differently. Right now I've already had a mental check for some Islamophobia. For those who are curious, the 3rd type were traitors to the cause. You see, Islamophobia is not a big issue in Brazil, at least in my view, noting that I don't belong to this group, and I'm not 100% aware of any problems they might go through. But there are so few followers of the Quran here that I'm the exception to the rule, having met some back in high school. Great people, all 3 of them, by the way. One even died as a hero after saving one child from drowning and returned to the ocean to save the second. Unfortunately, they didn't make it. After a lot of discussion and changing the sheet a little, the DM let me play with this character. So we started the campaign. Me, the paladin, my girlfriend at the time, cleric, our old DM, ranger, and another friend, rogue. The first few sections were okay, a little railroady, but we were a group that already knew each other and we were able to have some fun. We took the campaign lightly and the DM did not like that at all, saying that this campaign was serious and saying that he would GM like Ranger should have done at Curse of Strahd. Rude, in my opinion. He was especially angry as the Goodberry spell made our travels easier. He claimed, but you need water! And I said, we are surrounded by untouched snow. Let's make a fire, boil the snow to eliminate some impurity, and make tea to hydrate ourselves. At that time, the 4th or 5th meeting I think, we told him that he already knew us and how we played, that we were there to have fun, and that we would continue to take the campaign as lightly as we did all the others. If he wasn't having fun, Ranger could step in 1 week later and we all could play some other adventure. He declined this offer. The DM's insistence that he's better than Ranger at DMing ties perfectly into how seriously he takes himself and his first campaign with them in the worst way. It just sucks when you can clearly see the constellation of a disaster scenario getting clearer and clearer, but are unable to do anything about it. Offering to take the DM reins from the DM and give them back to Ranger was just about the best response here, but the best response will soon be just to kick him out. You'll get what I mean in a minute here. Around that time, my ex and I broke up, but we decided to continue playing together. She said that we were friends before we were boyfriend and girlfriend, and that we should continue to share at least this small part of our lives. My only disagreement with that is that I also demanded shared custody of our pets. A little comment, important for later. My ex is a very beautiful woman, and I completely understand those who at first glance thought she was way out of my league. So, after a particularly difficult encounter where there was almost a TPK and we had to run away, the DM said that we needed someone else in the party. So a week later, Ranger introduced us to a friend who had played with him before. Let's call him Bard. After that, when we reached level 4, I already knew how to play lute. The Ranger played the pan flute and the Bard played the violin, so Cleric got skilled feet to learn how to play the drum, and the Rogue got actor feet to mimic the Bard's voice. So with that, we formed a band, which resulted in the fury of the DM. He especially hated the Bard. Important to say that the player who played the Bard is mixed-raced, and his character was a fire genasi with skin black as coal. When facing any bad guy in the campaign at a time that the DM really wanted it to be tense, the Bard, as a good Bard, irritated the NPC joking and mocking until he got so angry that he started the fight with a lot of cursing and using the N-word. New disclaimer, in Brazil, the N-word issue is not as problematic as it is in the USA. Even so, the situation was very annoying because we were playing in English with a DM from that country. But as he was playing a bad guy, we thought that maybe he just got too carried away in the role-playing of the NPC. Nobody said anything, and we killed the NPC beautifully. When I saw that the NPC was almost finished, I didn't attack him at my turn, and asked Rogue not to finish the fight either, so the Bard finished him off with a vicious mockery. The fight was finished, but the issue definitely remained. While the slur wasn't as relevant in Brazil, it's clear that everyone was still weirded out by it because they know he's from a place where it's a much bigger deal. That, and the DM being known for disliking the darker-skinned character, is a really blatant indication of racism at the very least. When you also account for the fact that he quickly shot down any attempt the party was making at having innocent fun while playing a game, it looks like the DM has no idea what he's doing and at this point is just trying to retaliate against the party. But this isn't even the climax, it gets way worse exponentially from here. At the time, I didn't know if it was all in my head or not, but I started to get annoyed by what appeared to be his attempt at flirting with my ex-girlfriend. Various divine interventions, magic items chosen especially for her, and a ton of NPCs hitting on her. Much later, we found out that he was also being inconvenient in real life, liking all of her photos on Instagram, replying to all of her stories, etc. The Bard was really missing a lot of games, and once the DM brought an NPC to help us. At the beginning of our meeting, the NPC complained to the group saying that the Bard had been sleeping because he had a hangover and was just a lazy N-word. At that moment, we stopped the role-playing and spoke to the DM, saying that we were not going to accept this anymore, being in the game or not. After all, it was the second time. He defended himself by saying that he was just playing the character and etc. So, this time I had already done a mental check for racism as well. A week later, the Bard returned, and as the DM was doing his reintroduction with the NPC saying something like, "There you are, you little black shit," he said that in English, but in Portuguese this expression is very offensive. That was the straw that broke the camel's back for the group. When we raised our voices, he said, "I didn't call him the N-word." Even then, he was unable to realize how awful he is. And he started to complain that we don't take anything seriously, and that's why our country is in the situation that it is today. The DM using deeply offensive words with obviously bad intent, only to act surprised when people get upset with him is one thing, okay? But for him to try and conflate his D&D players with their country's hardships is actually laughable. "You play games for fun? No wonder you have a high crime rate. You can't trust people who laugh." And play music and D&D, the DM said, clutching his $69,000 hospital bill. You showed them, Cletus. So xenophobia? Checked. In fact, I don't even know if it's that or if it's just plain prejudice, because he's the foreigner and not us in this context. I was waiting for the moment he was gonna say something like, "You bunch of Mexicans," or something like that. I was usually the one who did all the talking, even because I work with the guy, thank God for online classes. But this time my ex talked about how uncomfortable he made her feel, and the ranger, who is the calmest and most balanced person I know, loses his shit on him. He yelled, asking what the fuck he was doing in this damn country and why he hadn't returned home since nobody wanted him here. He said it was disgusting how he treated others, including women, and that he would be much happier going back to the States to marry his redneck cousin or something. The DM left the call after repeating several times, "I'm not a redneck, I'm from Virginia! I'm not a redneck, I swear, I'm from Virginia!" My only concern is knowing that this guy has access to a bunch of high school teenagers and that he might be some kind of role model for them. Even more so with an intriguing story about war, living in different countries, etc. But what's better than a racist getting the boot? A racist catching a fist. This is the story of someone who was so obnoxious, so intolerable that he got KO'd. I won't keep you waiting any longer. Roll post. This was a few years back when 5e was still next and I was a freshman in college. The roommate I was assigned with in the dorms was pretty weird. We'll call him Roomy. Roomy had some strange ideas, including people who smoke should be executed, My Little Pony should be mandatory watching for all children, and vegans were going to burn in hell, among other really bizarre and terrible takes. Though Roomy was weird, he was alright to play D&D or video games with, and he played in a 3.5 game I was running. Roomy asked me if I wanted to join in his D&D Next playtest game. He said it was a pre-written module with pre-generated characters, and I agreed. I knew everyone else we were playing with. My future roommate, the future best man at my wedding, and a guy who I had a history class with. It was an alright group of people, and I was looking forward to it. The pre-generated characters were something as follows: Tiefling Warlock, Human Barbarian, Dwarf Fighter, Drow Ranger, Halfling Rogue, Half-Elf Sorcerer, and Dragonborn Paladin, as well as a Human Cleric. So we picked our characters. I picked the Human Barbarian, my future roommate chose the Halfling Rogue, a history guy chose a Human Cleric, and my best man chose the Tiefling Warlock. And as best man picked his character, Roomy said, "Hey God, I think this character would be better for you," and slid K the Drow. Puzzled, the best man asked why the ranger would be better for the party when there was already a barbarian with most of the same abilities and a rogue to fill the gaps. Roomy simply responded, well, you know. You see, the best man is black. His name is a traditional West African name, and his last name is Arabic. He is Muslim. The rest of the party is white as snow, but race has never been an issue with us because we're all nerdy as hell and bond over the same kinds of things. But it seemed like Roomy was implying something based on Best Man's IRL ethnicity. Best Man responds, "I know what. I don't see why you want me to play a ranger." Roomy, "Look at the ranger's race." Best Man, Drow, "You want me to play a dark-skinned character because I'm black?" he said, that last bit with a nervous chuckle. Roomy, "Well, yeah, everybody picked the correct skin color." This Roomy character is either actually mentally ill or has balls harder than his capacity for blatant racism. Telling a black guy to his face that he chose wrong because he's black is just about the worst D&D take I've ever heard. My best man then said, "Can't my tiefling be black?" Again, kind of nervous about where this is going. Roomy, "Tieflings are red. I wouldn't have invited you if I knew you were going to act like an N-word." The table was silent for a second. I chimed in, "Dude, shut the fuck up." Best man said, "I'm a what?" Roomie said it again. Hard R. Not even a second passed and my best man's fist went straight into the roomie's face. Hard. His nose was bloodied and he was crying. We all just left, disgusted. Best man helped me pack up my room that night while future roommate filled out the form to request me as his roommate. We never talked to Roomie again after that, and eventually I ended up running that D&D Next module, which was just a bastardized Keep on the Borderlands, but it was fun, and Best Man got to be a tiefling. TLDR, my roommate ran D&D and tried to force a black player to be a drow and then got punched in his face when he dropped an N-bomb. Oh, sweet schadenfreude. Hopefully that kid learned a lesson on not being the worst backseat player anyone's ever seen. But with that, I leave you all with some more tales of D&D pain on the left. You won't regret watching them. Or you will. But isn't that the end goal? Till next time.